This is Sports Talk with Player Agent 3. My next guest is a young sports professional with the Houston Rockets, Miss Elizabeth Lloyd. How you doing?
I'm getting you.
I'm doing fine. How you holding up with this whole COVID-19 situation going on?
You know, it's definitely been a different thing working from home and not having NBA basketball. You know, we were kind of cut off in the middle of the season. So it's definitely a different lifestyle from the 13 years of being in basketball mode all season and off season.
Right. Now you are an account executive with the Houston Rockets. Where did, the love of sports come from?
You know what? It really stems back from my childhood. I wasn't an athlete, but my cousin was in the NBA, Greg Cadillac Anderson. So
wow.
I had a family member that I was like, wow, Greg's like in the NBA. I'm a kid. It's fun. It's during the time when Michael Jordan, all of those guys are playing basketball is, really at that height. And I was like, okay, they're paying Greg this money, but how can I get paid too? How can I be a part of the NBA? So even as a child, I just always wondered like what was beyond the court when it came to basketball, because that's where I would fit in. And it just it happened where, that was something I thought about subconsciously, but I went through college and didn't really think about it anymore until I was getting ready to graduate. And that's maybe like a year later is when I started with the Houston Rockets.
Okay, so this is something that started when you were a young kid. It was nothing that that you thought about when you were in college or high school. You always had the passion to want to be in sports, whether it's on the court or off the court.
Well, my on the court did not last long. I think after my cousin started playing in the NBA around the late 80s, I went to play like a little intramural league, and I think I probably lasted one season in playing basketball because I was a little too girly. It messed up my pedicure, so I was like, I got to figure out another way.
Right. So are you from Houston?
No, I'm originally from Pontiac, Michigan, right outside Detroit.
Mm-hmm. So how did you end up in Texas?
Actually, my cousin Greg, or Cadillac, him and my mother were very close in age, and they were very close to each other. And it was just like, she came down here for a couple weeks and enjoyed it, and it was just better weather. Nobody wanted to deal with snow anymore. So that family kind of provoked us to come down south, and that's how I ended up in Houston.
Okay, so once you're in, so take us back to high school. When you're in high school, so your 4 years in high school, your whole plan was to work in sports. Was that?
No, actually, no, it wasn't. Honestly, I did not know exactly what I thought I wanted to be a pharmacist. That was something that I originally went to school for. I was pre-pharmacy. So in high school, and actually I graduated a year early, so I only had 3 years to think about it in high school. I wanted to be a pharmacist. So I went to college for pharmacy. And then when I got to college and after like the second year of drug cards, I was like, oh, I think I got to figure out something else that's more befitting to my personality. And I went into communication.
Oh, okay. All right. So where did you attend college?
Texas Southern University.
Okay, HBCU.
Yes, HBCU grad.
So after you made that change, you said you wanted to be a pharmacist, but after you made that change, what type of preparation did you have to be able to, get the opportunities that you got when you graduated from college?
And you have to realize this was a time when the internet wasn't as huge as it is now. For some reason, I felt a gravitational pull to the Houston Rockets and to basketball once I was graduating, because that was something I was familiar with, as far as like being on the other side of being a family member and being around it on that end. And I just had a desire to know about the front office, because I realized that there were people working in the front office portion, and my degree, my concentration was public relations and advertising. So I was like, maybe I could go into PR, for the team. And, this is when you had to fax your resume to people, and there was no emailing them. But there was, still kind of like the internet, it just wasn't as prevalent as it is now. So it was a lot of me making phone calls and just kind of like cold calling the organization to find out like what kind of openings, what's the best way to get your foot in the door. And that's kind of how I started. I knew I was graduating and I was trying to see if they had internships. And they told me no. The Rockets told me no the first time I tried to get an internship. Woo on them.
So, being a female, African-American female at that, was there an intimidation factor being that, sports is so male driven and male dominant? Was there an intimidation factor for you, applying for these jobs or actually even, wanting to be in the sports industry?
I wouldn't say that there was an intimidation, because at that point, coming out of college, I really didn't know what I was walking into. The only side I knew about it was the player side. So it was more of an exploration experience for me. I didn't have any really set intentions, because I didn't know exactly where I would fit. I knew marketing would be something I would be comfortable with. So that was kind of like the avenue I went towards, and I didn't know what I was going to walk into. And it's a funny story, because when I applied, after I didn't get the internship, it's about trying again and keep trying, because sometimes you'll get a no. And if you let the no stop you, then you never know what, you might could have gotten past. And they had a young lady that answered the phone when I was just cold calling. And she was like, well, you should try out for the marketing department, because that's an entry level position with NBA teams and a lot of sports teams at that. Usually the marketing department is where you can kind of enter in, either post college, or at least your senior year. And at that point, I just was kind of like exploring opportunities, and I was willing to do what it took to show them my capabilities and to see what my capabilities were.
Did you use Cadillac Anderson to try to get your foot in the door?
No, because he never played for the Rockets. He played for the Spurs and the Bucks and the Denver Nuggets and the Pistons. So okay. I didn't try that route. At all.
So how did you actually get the opportunity? You said the Houston Rockets turned you down. How did you actually get the opportunity with the Rockets?
It's funny because it just so happened a sorority sister answered the phone for the Rockets. It was a young lady that worked there that happened to be a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Okay. And yes, and so, we had like made that connection just off of the first conversation. And she goes, send me your resume and I'm going to give it to my manager, the marketing manager at the time. And she gave it to him. He gave me a call. And I guess this was around May. And he said that they wouldn't start hiring for next season until August. And if I was still interested in the position, because they usually hire about 10 to 12 new staff members for that department each season. And he said, if you're still interested in July, give me a call. So a few months went by. I sent him an email. At this point, it was email. I sent him an email and I received an email back from another young lady that said, Clay doesn't work here anymore. And I was like, oh, but Clay promised me a job in May. So like, what's up with that? And they still gave me the interview. They were like, well, send us your resume. They gave me the interview and I actually interviewed and I got the position.
Okay, when you got that position, did you feel like that you had made it?
Oh, yes. And you know what? Let me tell you, you have to manage the expectation for college students or people that are wanting to get into the corporate side and the front office side of sports teams. like you come out with a college degree and you're going to get paid like minimum wage, you know? So, but I still thought I had made it because I figured of a totem pole, like that was a better totem pole to be at the bottom of than some other totem pole.
All right. And it seems as though that opportunity led to more opportunities because you're on the, I think it's the National Board of Retired Players in the NBA.
So I am one of the advisors for the NBA Retired Players Association here in Houston.
All right. So talk about that that situation.
And of course, that started with Cadillac. He is a member of the chapter. And after about the first 6 or 7 years of me being an executive and professional with the Houston Rockets, and they were in one of their meetings, and my cousin, Cadillac, was like, you know what, y'all need to let my little cousin come in here and help y'all because she's been with the Rockets. And he kind of like pumped me up. And it all started with me just wanting to help them out because I think we were having All-Star at the time here in Houston in 2012. Yeah, that's when we had the All-Star here in Houston. And they were doing an event and he wanted me to just kind of check it out and help them with a few logistics, you know, for certain levels of professionalism. And it just kind of started there. And I kind of helped them out just off of, volunteering and just being more committed and finding out some of the programs they were interested in. STEM, which is something to give back to students and kids. It made me get a little bit more passionate about helping them and just kind of being that connection with the team as well, with the Houston Rockets and with the retired players, and just really trying to build those relationships. And then they asked me to be on the board maybe like a year or so later, and I've been on ever since.
Well, what are your actual duties with the organization? Is it just for the retired players of the entire NBA or just the Houston Rockets?
No, it's the retired players that live in Houston. So, there's guys that played all sorts, the Lakers, the Clippers. It's people that moved here in Houston that live here in Houston. So a lot of guys, I think Houston chapter is probably one of the largest chapters for the NBA Retired Players Association. So, that's something I volunteer my extra time to. And I think it's definitely a worthy cause for the athletes who want to try to do stuff in the community after they're done playing.
Do you get a chance to interact with some of the current Houston Rocket players?
Yes, actually, a few of the guys I've worked with Eric Gordon on a lot of his philanthropic initiatives here in the city of Houston. We've taken single mothers out each holiday and their kids and just kind of like sewing into their lives. We've worked with a few women and children shelters. I've also helped with 3 The Hardin Way Foundation. I'm really, very close friends with Miss Manya, James Harden's mother. So I love to volunteer. So I do work with some of the guys on a lot of different things. In the past, I've worked with Dwight Howard and some of his stuff that he's done. I've worked with Tarek Black, Trevor Ariza. So I have gotten the opportunity to work with some guys on some things outside of the Rockets.
And it seems you're heavily involved in community relations. What would you say your biggest challenge has been since you started this role?
The role with the retired players or the role with the Rockets?
Just the retired players as well as the Rockets. What has been your biggest challenge?
What has been my biggest challenge? Probably people following directions. Sometimes I love my athletes, and a lot of times they do really good, but a lot of times, especially for the things that I do outside of the Houston Rockets, I'm pretty thorough and detailed. So as long as everyone can, as long as we all follow the plan, it makes things go smoothly, especially when you're interacting with the community.
Yeah, talking and speaking about, what you do outside of the Houston Rockets, Can you talk about some of the things that you do outside of that organization?
Outside of the Rockets?
Yes.
I have a heart. I'm a single mother, so I definitely have a heart for single mothers and just those that are really. I like to work with some of the nonprofit organizations in Houston that have like GED programs and that have different programs to help mothers that are, at risk. So a lot of times, any of the efforts that any of the players or even things that the Rockets have going on that I can include. Them, I try to do that to just kind of be, a beacon of hope for those single mothers out there that, maybe don't think that they can, excel to a whole different level. People don't think about the NBA and think about the front office or females doing different things. So I try to be an inspiration for that and really just helping with the children in those STEM programs. I really believe that, the children and helping this next generation out is key and important. And a lot of times people, young people, once they hear about the Rockets or they hear basketball, they're automatically intrigued. And then you hit them with some educational and some STEM initiatives that maybe they haven't been exposed to. I think that's more key, and that's what I have more enjoyment doing.
Being a, African-American woman and, you seem to be, pretty successful in what you're doing. Why do you think it's important for young African-American women to be seen as trailblazers, not on the court, but off the court? Why do you think that's important?
I believe it's important for sports, just in the simple fact that it is a Caucasian male dominated industry. A lot of times, and for us, our brothers are showcased on the court, and they're showcased for their talent and their physical ability. And for African-American women, we have excelled so much, but it's been so under the radar, or it's so behind the scenes, or they don't get the proper accolades and attention that they deserve. And especially in sports and in the front offices, not a lot of African-American women. I'm the only African-American in my department. So it's definitely important for the culture to see us as women and African-American women, excelling and doing something that's absolutely out of the ordinary. Not a lot of females that are in sales. And, it is important for us to be seen as well as heard.
So what do you tell a young female that want to follow in your footsteps, that want to be in the sports industry? What type of uplift or advice do you give them, being that it's so male dominant?
The first thing I share with women that I've mentored, young ladies that I've spoke to, is you definitely have to I think it's important to have a spiritual lifestyle first. Because when you're dealing with men, when you're dealing with, there's certain industries where there's certain types of men that you're going to come around and different people, you have to be mentally prepared. You have to be integratable, making sure that your integrity lies not when someone is around, but at all times when no one's around. A lot of my business over these years has been referrals. I work with individuals, and your integrity means a lot. And when people can trust your integrity, when they can trust your word, when they can depend on, what they know they're going to get from you, it's a lot easier to maneuver and for people to trust you with high level information or to trust you with high level, individuals. So I really try to tell them to make sure that you have your spirituality set. That way you can have that foundation and that level of integrity can already be there. And then, just completing the things and being about your word. It definitely goes a long way with everyone. So those are the main things, because it's like you never know what someone's going to deal with. But if your integrity is intact, if, you keep your word, then at that point you can kind of maneuver through all the other things that you have to go through.
Now being a HBCU grad, Texas Southern, what do you think about athletes, high profile athletes coming out of high school, going to HBCUs? What do you think about that? And do you think it's talk, or do you think it's actually going to happen?
Actually, I think that there are better chances now than it would be, because there are certain programs that are gearing towards HBCUs. My mentor is Purvis Short, who is with the MBPA. Yeah. And over the past few years, the MBPA has been hosting programs for the top 50 of HBCU basketball athletes during the summertime to, just kind of give them that recognition, to give them that opportunity to work with, NBA players and NBA retired players who are part of programs like the top 100, and this is like their top 50. So I think based on now and some of those programs that they're working on, it's probably an easier chance or a better chance that, those type of guys can get some sort of access to NBA world versus before, when there was no extra program that the players, wanted to extend out to those type of guys.
Do you think it's talked about more because of the climate that we're in right now with the whole George Floyd situation and Breonna Taylor? Do you think, that's the reason why we're talking about it more now?
Well, you know what? If that is the reason, I think it's good, because, sometimes some things have to trigger for different changes. And, even just for guys that want to go to HBCUs and, want to see past maybe going overseas and seeing that opportunity. One thing that I did in particular with the retired players is when Texas Southern University was part of the Sweet 16 for the NCAA a few years ago, I had the retired players come and talk to them, just to kind of like give them, that encouragement, and then also to kind of let them know like there's other opportunities as well. So if the current climate and the things, especially with Houston and George being from Houston, I think that would be for the better, because those guys do have talented guys that go to HBCUs. There's a lot of talent all over. And I think broadening the horizon and that pool for draft, it's only a better thing. And if this is something that, propels more attention to HBCU athletes and them having an opportunity to get into the draft or to even, work with the G League, then I'm all for it, because I definitely want more of our guys, especially HBCUs, to get that opportunity.
Now, staying with the whole George Floyd, Breonna Taylor theme, what are your, being an African American, what are your thoughts on that, both situations? You said you have a young child. What do you tell kids when we see situations like this and they're asking these questions?
And actually, I have teenagers. I have a 19-year-old and I have a 16-year-old, and my son is 16. So we've always had these conversations simply because we do live in a suburb of Houston, and it's a very mixed area. It's just really sad as a parent, because you have to be afraid for your kid to even just go to the store. And with Breonna Taylor, it's hard to figure out where that trust lies with police and with authorities like that, and where that self-preservation comes in. Mm-hmm. So for me, we just, we really definitely pray. And, I tell my kids, like, you have to be respectable, but you also have to, figure out at any given point, like, what is the best, safest situation for you to stay alive, because you can't count on officers, especially if they're not going to listen. And with my daughter, I'm like, it doesn't matter that you're a woman. You know, it used to be we have to be afraid for our son. With Breonna Taylor, I mean, this young lady, you know, upstanding citizen, and she's in her home, you know? So I just try to like keep them aware of what's going on, letting them see what's going on, and just, you know, try to keep that communication and just tell them to be on the lookout, you know, be aware of your surroundings. You can't trust every officer. Right.
All right, let's switch. We're going to switch gears. You know, I got a few more questions. I'm going to let you get out of here. But, and I'm sure you saw The Last Dance doc. You're a huge NBA fan. What do you think about, you know, that doc and this whole LeBron James, Michael Jordan comparison? What side of the fence are you on?
Oh my goodness, is this a trick question? One, because that was the time that I was like hardcore into basketball in the 80s. I thought it was cool because my cousin was playing. I actually met Michael Jordan in the Palace, you know, like I have his autograph. So I was like a huge Michael Jordan fan. And he was just always amazing. And watching The Last Dance, like every Sunday, I was just like glued and ready for it to come on to just see like what I didn't miss. So like I absolutely loved it, and it could have kept going and I would have been happy. In regards to LeBron, I think he is an awesome player. And I think, you know, when people try to compare them, it really isn't a comparison. I think it should be looked more upon like, this is a level of greatness and this is a level of greatness, versus trying to pin them against each other, because then you got to bring Kobe in there. You know, then you got to bring Kobe into the conversation. So I think it's about celebrating everyone for their greatness. Now, I would love for LeBron to be with us. Like, that would be like amazing. I think any team that he goes to, he's an extremely valuable asset. But it's like, I don't want to take away anything from Michael and what he accomplished, because I mean, at the time he was doing what he was doing, it's a different style of play. You know, LeBron ain't got no Bill Laimbeer and, you know, the real bad boys he got to go through, you know, the worm Dennis Rodman. You know, he didn't have, you know, LeBron doesn't have to face a lot of those things either. So that's why I'm like, you can't compare. If they were all still playing the same type of basketball, then maybe you could kind of go into those kind of comparisons. But I think giving each one of them their level and their accolades of greatness is the safest route.
Okay, all right, that's good enough. What's next for Elizabeth Lloyd?
What's next? You know what? I've been in the basketball world for 13 years and I absolutely love it. The next thing for Elizabeth would be to continue to work in the community, bring awareness through the sport of basketball, assisting different players with initiatives that they want to do that actually can help coincide with what they do with the actual team and organization. I think a lot of guys don't utilize the teams like they could. That's something that over the years, I think has been something guys have appreciated my input and some of the directions and ideas and details that, you know, I can help them along the way. So I think just growing in that area, and even if it's an individual situation, I think I just love basketball and I'm going to always be associated to that in sports. But them understanding the power that they have while they're playing is so key and so important in the different accesses to the type of individuals that can help them with what they want to do after they're done playing. Those are some of the things that I continue to strive to help guys out with, and I think that's something that'll be a part of my future as well.
All right, last thing. What do you think women of color can do to even the playing field in terms of pay as well as positions?
That's a good question. In regards to pay, I mean, it's a boys' game. It's still a boys' game. It's a good old boys' game, and you have to. I think now one of the things that I really love is that the Dallas Mavericks, they have a African American president and CEO for the Mavericks, and I think those type of steps, like African American women getting higher positions in the front office. I'm at an executive level. We do have some African American women that our director of community relations is African American. But I think once we start going into the rooms as a CEO, you know, in those areas, that will help to create a balance in regards to pay. You know, those are the decision makers. And luckily for what I do, I'm in sales. So as much effort as I put in is what I get out as well. I don't feel that my counterparts are getting much more than what I'm getting. It's about your effort, and it's about what you put into your book of business. In regards to just the organization and getting those positions, I think more of us have to step up to that plate of integrity and get out of that fear. You know, in Houston, it's an international city. There's so many different types of individuals and companies and people that you have to deal with. And I think getting out of that fear of talking to people you don't know, or, you know, being comfortable to have a conversation with the CEO of an oil and gas company that is all over the world, and their other head offices in Norway, you know? So I think just us getting out of those comfort zones and being okay and being comfortable and confident in ourselves to get ourselves in a position to get a higher position.
Mm-hmm. Where can we find you on social media?
I am on Instagram at PinkElizabeth08. I am also on LinkedIn at Elizabeth Hannah Lloyd. And yeah, that's my social media.
All right, there you have it. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come on Sports Talk with Player Agent 3. Everybody go look up Elizabeth Lloyd, Sports Talk with Player Agent 3. Thank you.